Good evening, everybody. I'll call the March 7th meeting of Dublin City Council to order. Ann, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms. Here. Ms. Saleh. Here. Mr. Keenan. Here. Vice Mayor Reiner.
Here.
Mr. Lechleiter.
Here.
Ms. Aludo.
Here.
John, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Special recognitions and proclamations. It is evidently Business Appreciation Day. Dana?
Yes, I believe Rachel Ray is going to present this.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. This week is Business Appreciation Day here in Dublin, actually this Friday. So this Friday, something we do every year is we take a bunch of Irish bands out to a number of our businesses here in the community and some office buildings and do a couple performances and some raffles just to thank our businesses for doing work in our community. And as part of that, every year we like to do a proclamation and recognize one of our companies that has made significant investments in our community. So tonight I have here with us Mark Marino, who's Vice President of Product Development with Command Alcon. Command Alcon has recently moved into their brand new 30,000 square foot facility out in the West Innovation District, which you heard Dana talk a lot about at the city last week. They did that in partnership with Dublin Building Systems. So we'll do the proclamation, and then I'd like to have Mark talk a little bit more about Command Alcon and why they've chosen to expand their brand new facility here in Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, come on up. How are you this evening? Good, how are you doing? That's great. Whereas Dublin, Ohio is known for its thriving corporate community, from our hallmark international business to our emerging companies built with robust entrepreneurial spirit, and whereas world-class companies like Command Alcon go beyond doing business in Dublin and also contribute to the international success of the community through exemplary corporate citizenship, and whereas the Dublin business community enables smart and innovative organizations to realize their business goals by supporting a collaborative environment for success, and whereas the vast majority of new jobs created in Dublin have come from existing businesses within this community, and whereas Dublin's continued economic vitality is the result of high-quality development supported by the city's existing business community, and whereas Dublin is proud that more than 3,000 companies have chosen to make Dublin their home, and whereas the City of Dublin is a beneficiary of the outstanding work and knowledge of more than 70,000 employees within our community, and whereas Dublin businesses have contributed significantly to the overall economic well-being of Dublin, the Central Ohio region, and the state of Ohio, and whereas the city expresses its sincere appreciation to all Dublin businesses and employees for choosing to work and innovate in Dublin, and whereas the city invites all Dublin businesses and employees to celebrate the Irish spirit present throughout this community, not only on St. Patrick's Day, but throughout the year, now, therefore, I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of the City of Dublin, Ohio, on behalf of Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim Friday, March 11th, 2016, as Business Appreciation Day in the City of Dublin, celebrating the continued success of our business community. Thank you. Want to say a few words? Tell us about your company.
Sure. Well, we've been in Dublin.
Step over to the mic.
Sure. We've been in Dublin for over 20 years, and we just outgrew our business, outgrew our facility. So a couple years ago, we started looking around and making a decision, and you guys came to the table along with DBS and built us a great new facility, and we're ready to grow for another 20 years here. So we're right in front of Amazon. If you see the red roof, that's us.
I was with you when you guys broke ground.
Yeah, you were with us,
It
yeah.
wasn't that too terribly long ago.
No, it was last spring.
And you guys are now up fully
Yeah,
operational.
the Ireland's did a great job putting the building together. So.
They did. It's a wonderful.
We moved in
facility.
at the end of January, so we're in business.
I wonder if you'd do a little commercial for your company. Give us a little explanation.
Sure. Command Alcon, we specialize in software and hardware systems tailored to construction materials producers. So Anderson Concrete, Buckeye, those are our customers. But we're global, so we ship products all over the world from Dublin here. And we have facilities we have 9 different offices spread throughout the world. This is our second largest facility.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for all your efforts. Now, we will move on to the National Athletic Training Month, and I would ask Mr. Chris Troyer, you'd step forward for us? And can you introduce who it is that you have brought with you?
Sure. I'd like to introduce Megan Hubble from the Ohio State University Sports Medicine Program, Eric Layton from Nationwide Children's Hospital Sports Medicine Program, Jason Wolshire from Ohio Health Sports Medicine, Pam Stotts from Dublin City Schools Athlete Healthcare, Donna Hall from Nationwide Children's Sports Medicine Program, and Richard Quincy from Ohio State University Sports Medicine Program.
Thank you. And you're not going to get away with that. Come on. Come on. Can't hide back there.
Live and streaming around the world.
Streaming around the world. You guys turn around, face that. Whereas athletic trainers have a long history of providing quality health care for athletes and those engaged in physical activity based on specific tasks, knowledge, and skills acquired through their nationally regulated educational process, and whereas athletic trainers provide the prevention of injuries, recognition, evaluation, and aggressive treatment, rehabilitation, healthcare administration, education, and guidance. And whereas the National Athletic Trainers Association represents and supports 43,000 members of the athletic training profession employed in the following settings: professional sports, colleges and university, high schools, clinics and hospitals, corporate and industrial settings, military branches. And whereas leading organizations concerned with athletic training and healthcare have joined together in a common desire to raise public awareness of the importance of the athletic training profession and to emphasize the importance of quality healthcare within the aforementioned settings. And whereas such an effort will improve healthcare for athletes and those engaged in physical activity and promote athletic trainers as health professionals, now therefore I, Gregory S. Peterson, Mayor of the City of Dublin, on behalf of the Dublin City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of March as National Athletic Training Month in Dublin, Ohio, and encourage everyone to learn more about the importance of athletic training. Signed the 7th day of March, 2006.
On behalf of the athlete healthcare staff at Dublin City Schools and my colleagues from Nationwide Children's Sports Medicine, Ohio Health Sports Medicine, and OSU Sports Medicine, I'd like to thank Mayor Peterson and the members of City Council for this honor. We are very fortunate to work in a community like Dublin, a community that values its children and provides them with wonderful opportunities in both school-based and recreational sports and activities. As certified athletic trainers, we are proud to be there for these children and their families when injuries occur, helping them through the injury process and back to success and joy in their chosen sport or activity. As C.S. Lewis said, children are not distractions from more important work. They are the most important work. We are all proud to be partners with the City of Dublin to help make the future brighter and healthier for the children of Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Okay, special presentations. Mark Gannon.
Good evening, members of council. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, our staff, and our over 500 volunteers that serve on an annual basis at the food pantry, thank you very much for having us here tonight, and thank you for all the support you provide us throughout the year. Without the support of the City of Dublin, the school district, Jefferson Township, all of our fantastic corporate donors and partners, our church partners, civic partners, and all the wonderful individual donors and volunteers, we certainly wouldn't be able to do what we do for the City of Dublin. I'm here today with Molly Arbogast. She's the new Executive Director of the Food Pantry, and I just wanted to introduce her, and she's going to say a few words about some things going on at the Food Pantry. But just by way of introduction, you may remember last year our Executive Director, Nancy Johnson, who had been with the pantry for several years after forming it as a not-for-profit 501c3, she retired, and so we embarked upon a search for a new executive director. We received about 100 resumes for the position. And we narrowed it down to about 6 or 7 candidates, and we were stunned by the quality of individuals, many of them local residents who had been involved with the pantry, just stunned by the quality of people, and had a very difficult decision to make on hiring the new executive director. But we were thrilled that Molly accepted our offer. We're very excited. She's going to help us with some new strategic thoughts and make sure that we develop a new strategic plan for the next several years. Also reach out to our community partners, help develop our donor base, and really just spread the word about the pantry and what we do. Before introducing Molly, I'd like to thank Mayor Peterson and City Manager McDaniel for coming to our event we had a couple weeks ago at the pantry. It was an open house whereby they were able to meet some board members, some of our volunteers, and our staff. And we always love to have people come to the pantry. We think when you come to see what we're doing there that it really makes a big difference. And we certainly couldn't do it without the Dublin Community Church, who's a fantastic partner and hosts us there. So I'd like to introduce Molly Arbogast as our executive director.
Hi, Molly, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. So a little background on myself. I graduated with my master's in social work with a focus on philanthropy and nonprofit management from Loyola University in Chicago. From there, I worked with American Cancer Society just down the street. Some of my duties including running the Relay for Life at Ohio State University and the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer Walk. From there, I moved over to Jenny's Ice Creams, where I managed 3 of their shops for them, and then moved into a training manager position, which I created, and helped them also implement a manager and training program, as well as traveled to train and help open shops in new cities. I'm so excited to be in Dublin. I'm so excited to be at the pantry. The overwhelming support of community, both in volunteers and resources, is just so amazing and so touching. As far as updates with the pantry, we've continued to see an increase in people coming to see us. We're averaging around 240 households a month right now. We had a record high in January of 270 households, and so we're expecting to still see a pretty busy winter. We continue to have strong community support, both in volunteers and resources. Like I said, the pantry is almost entirely volunteer staffed. Myself and our operations director, Lynn Hessler, are both part-time, and everything else is all run by our amazing core group of volunteers. This year for our Harvest of Hope event, which is where we provide Thanksgiving boxes to families in need, we provide those not just for our clients, but we, this year for the first time, opened it up to counselors at all of the Dublin City schools to sign up families that they thought had a need as well, and saw a record high of more than 400 families that were registered this year. So we're able to provide turkeys as well as pies, rolls, fresh produce, and then canned goods as well to, so those families can have a great Thanksgiving. We are excited to get into a creation of a new strategic plan between myself and the board. Our current, the existing strategic plan ran through 2015 and was focused on creation of a board structure and sustainability. So we're looking forward to really digging in and creating a new plan to serve the community and those in need even more. Some upcoming events that we have going on in April, Washington Township Fire Department will be doing their food drive throughout the whole month again, which was really great for us last year. We also have the Girl Scouts that do their drive for us on April 9th. And then August, we are always look forward to Irish Fest, where last year the donations brought in over 17,000 pounds of food for the pantry.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Molly,
you.
for all that you do. And Dana and I did go to the open house, and it's just such a wonderful program that you have. And in a community that is so blessed with so much, sometimes it's very easy to overlook that there are plenty of people right here in our own neighborhoods that need a hand. And, you know, as I understand it, these 240 families, they only come once a month, right? And they select from each category of type of food, and then they come back the next month. So this is something that all of us can help with that cause. And when I went home and told my kids about this program, they're shocked that it's possible there's a kid in their class that's hungry.
Yeah.
And so I think we as a community that is so fortunate, we need to make sure that we're doing everything to help out organizations like yours. So thank you very much for
Thank
coming in.
you.
Council, anybody else want to say anything? Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
sir, for coming in. Donna?
Good evening, members of council. The City of Dublin is fortunate to have relationships with a number of academic institutions, and one of those is Ohio State University. Happens to be very well represented here tonight. In fact, Dr. Dave Williams, Dean of the College of Engineering, was a member of the Columbus 2020 Business Development Team that accompanied Jeremiah Gracia and former Councilmember Marilee Chinesi-Zucker to meetings in Japan this past fall. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dean Williams to speak to us about activities near Don Scott Field, as well as other university initiatives occurring in our region. Dean Williams?
Thank you. Dr. Williams, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to bring you up to speed on a couple of major opportunities we have that fall under my responsibility as Dean of Engineering. Many of you may have heard over the years that Ohio State University was thinking of selling the airport, and I want to reassure you that that is not going to happen. Recently, the Board of Trustees decided that rather than selling the airport, it was too valuable to both the university and the community, and therefore we want to bring you up to speed on some of the things that we're planning for the airport, which of course is, we believe, a major driver for economic development in this region. The OSU airport at Don Scott Field is the fourth busiest airport in the state of Ohio. There are over 70,000 takeoffs and landings every year. There are only 3 universities, research universities in the nation that own and operate their own airport. In addition to Ohio State, Purdue, and Texas A&M are in that position. It is one of the very few general aviation fields that has an FAA control tower there. It's the only aviation program in the whole Midwest of the United States to operate in a FAA-controlled environment. We're also one of only 84 out of the 3,000 general aviation fields in the United States to be designated a national airport by the FAA. So this is, in fact, an airport that has importance way beyond Ohio State. Focusing on what we do for our students, first of all, we teach students. There are over 300 students at Ohio State Airport learning to fly, and next time your flight is grounded because the pilot hasn't shown up, you will know why we're trying to train more and more pilots. We have joint programs with the Fisher College of Business in airport management because the management of airports in the future, particularly with new developments in air traffic control, new ways of flying aircraft, and so on. It'll be very important that we have airport managers who understand those possibilities. Also, we partner with major companies that have interests in aviation. We carry out research at Don Scott Field. Close to $20 million a year of research is done in the general area of aerospace and aviation. For example, GE Aviation in Cincinnati tests its jet engines at Don Scott Field. And these are not just routine jet engines. These are the biggest ones that they make, which have a fan at the front that is 13 feet high, and they will hang on the next generation of Boeing 777s. These are just extraordinary pieces of engineering, $22 million a pop if you want one, and there's 2 for each aircraft. So the testing of these is carried out at very, very few universities, and we're honored at Don Scott Field to have GE Aviation there. There are 37 GE engineers working full-time on the next generation of aircraft engines at Don Scott Field. We also do a lot of work with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the U.S. Air Force's major research operation. As a university, too, we're engaged in community outreach. There are over 2,000 high school and middle school students who visit Don Scott Field every year because there's only a few things that get students at that age excited about science and engineering. One's dinosaurs and the other's aerospace. So they love to come and watch aircraft taking off and seeing the work that we're doing. There's an exhibit at Don Scott Field for the Tuskegee Airmen, the African Americans who flew in World War II and who were based originally out of Rickenbacker. We have youth aviation partners, Career Eagles. We host the nation's SafeCon competition. That's 30 schools of aviation around the nation who come to Don Scott Field to test the safety lessons that the student pilots have learned during their courses. Our aviation program was designated the number one in the nation last year out of that whole operation. So we think that we help the community, and directly in terms of economic development beyond the teaching and the research and the outreach that we do. There are 813 jobs at Don Scott Field. Up to half of those are students earning money towards their education, and it's not cheap to get an aviation degree. We can't do that for the $10,000 a year tuition that our students normally pay. We have 17 planes that need buying, refurbishing, and updating, so it's an expensive program. So anything we can do to help those students pay for their education is very important. The payroll there is $36 million. There's close to $160 million of direct economic impact in Don Scott Field. We have a very diverse customer base. ODOT, the Office of Aviation, the Governor's Plane, MedFlight, the Ohio State Highway Patrol, major industries, Cardinal Health, Worthington Industries, Advanced Drainage Systems, IBM CEO, when she's coming to Dublin, lands at Don Scott Field. I can't mention the CIA and the Drug Enforcement Administration, who also fly out of Don Scott Field. So those are the reasons why it's designated an airport of national importance. About a year ago, we were delighted to receive a gift of $10 million from the Knowlton Foundation in Cincinnati that's going to help us upgrade Don Scott Field, which has been basically untouched, particularly if any of you have driven by and seen the state of some of the old hangars there, untouched for about 50 years. We will be putting up a $10 million new terminal and education center to help educate the increasing numbers of students who see aviation as a future. We will start breaking ground on new hangars this summer. There are over 100 planes with some of the many major businesses there that need hangar space. And until we sorted out the future of the airport, it wasn't possible to help our customer base. And also, I know that there are operations around here. The Memorial Golf Tournament, I think, takes place here. And many of you know that that weekend is a very busy weekend as the golfers come in and out with their own private planes. So we are putting in place a strategic plan for the airport now that we have the green light to go ahead. And as we develop those plans, we will keep the community informed. We've created a community outreach council for the airport involving people, representatives from Dublin, from Worthington, and from Columbus, and from industries and alumni and so on. So lots of exciting things happening there. It is over 1,300 acres of land, and not all of it is restricted. So we see the opportunity for increased industry involvement, economic development, bringing in companies that have an interest in aviation and aerospace. At the other end of Route 33 is a place called the Transportation Research Center, which also reports to the College of Engineering. I'm chair of the board of that operation. There's 4,500 acres out at TRC. 7.5-mile test track, a crash testing facility, the largest independent proving ground in the United States, and the only place where the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration tests vehicles. It has a vehicle research and testing center there. So when things happen like ignition keys that cause problems, unintended acceleration, tires that cause SUVs to flip over, all the testing is done at TRC. That operation, again, has not grown particularly over the last several years, and we have changed the leadership, and we have brought in leadership at the university to put together what we call our Smart Mobility Initiative, recognizing that the way we travel is going to change dramatically over the next 10 to 20 years. And for those of us getting older, I can't wait for somebody to drive my car for me. And if Uber's not around, then perhaps the car will take me where I need to go. So we are developing a major plan at TRC to make it the best proving ground in the nation. And with all that land available, we're working with Union County to do things like lay fiber out there to increase the capabilities for gathering data to feed into the world of autonomous vehicles. We have plans for a major wind tunnel facility shared with several of the major automobile manufacturers, and initial plans along with the Department of Transportation to build an autonomous vehicle testing facility Again, these are plans, these are underway in many cases, and there's financing underway as well. The university will be investing, as well as we hope the community, the federal and the state government. So those are some very exciting things that are happening, all of which I think can help drive the economy of this area. I have a small handout on the airport if any of you would like it, and any members of the public would care to have it. Donna has it right here. So that's my report, and as things improve and grow and more things happen, if you wish, I'd be happy to come back and report. So,
Dr. Wibbs, we really appreciate you being here, and you're always welcome.
Thank
You taking the time to come in and share your updates, and it is truly appreciated, and we appreciate you as a neighbor. It's a really important, valuable asset for the city. Mike?
Thank you.
You mentioned the Beerfield tournament. I noticed there's a lot of activity over there on home football Saturday games as well.
I can't think why that
Yeah.
happens. Yes, indeed, our alumni will fly into Don Scott Field, and we provide special transportation. And
Is there the possibility that we could have a tour of the Transportation Research Center?
yes,
That's the right answer. Great, I will call you.
yes, and we can take you around the track. I've only got to 150 miles an hour, so with the professional driver, don't try this at home. Right?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, happy to arrange that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Excuse me,
you.
Greg. I wonder if Dana, did you want to comment? We recently received a presentation on track, and maybe you could speak to a little of what we're doing.
I would just echo what Mayor Peterson said, and thank you, Dean Williams, for your partnership and keeping us informed and all the great things going on at the airport. And certainly, it is very important to the economic viability of the whole region, but it certainly has an impact for us as well. You may have mentioned this, and I apologize if you did, but it also serves as a logistics sort of a hub for LabCorp, who imports a lot of their, they have a lot of cars driving into LabCorp with specimens from multiple states. They also fly in jets every night with specimens to test, and then they're back out the next day. So it serves that purpose as well. So appreciate the partnership. Certainly, we're working with Dean Williams, members of the Center for Automotive Research, the TRC, Union County, Marysville, and the group, as we mentioned at the State of the City last week, to work in partnership with all those players to make the 33 corridors innovative as possible, and we appreciate your partnership on that.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate your partnership, too. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you. The Community Attitudes Survey, Sandra?
Good evening. In the last decade, Dublin City Council has supported the implementation of 8 community surveys. The National Citizen Survey, which is a collaborative effort between the National Research Center and the International City, County, and Management Association. Those surveys were conducted in 2009, 12, and 15. And then we also have the Community Attitude Survey, and that is conducted by local firm Saperstein Associates. And we've done those in 2006, 8, 10, 13, and now in 2016. We are pleased to report that the trend of high marks continues here in Dublin. Tonight, Dr. Marty Saperstein will present the findings of the 2016 Community Attitude Survey. The length of his presentation is about 20 minutes. That mirrors the time our residents gave to actually take the survey. And so we're really fortunate that when he placed the calls, our community rose to the occasion, and tonight we have those results to present. So now I'll turn the mic over to Dr. Saperstein.
Mayor, council, staff, I'm just happy to be back.
Is that it? You're done?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming.
I am happy to be here to share with you the results of the 2016 Community Attitude Survey. You know, we do this survey for a variety of communities here in Central Ohio, and I view them as an opportunity for the residents of a community to speak to you in a candid way, but also it gives council and other leadership in the community It gives all of you data around which you can make better decisions. So it's a decision-making tool on one hand, it's a voice for the community on the other hand. A little bit about what we did. These are telephone interviews similar to our survey last time, registered voters. This year, 79% of our interviews were conducted on cell phones. If you want to know how much the world, my world, has changed, when we did this survey 3 years ago, the percentage of cell phones was 33%. And I'm happy to say that the Pew Research Center followed us in adopting well, that's a bit immodest, I know, but the Pew Research Center, which you see reported all the time in the paper, they now adopt a 75-25 split, as do we. Oh, and Sandra underestimated, so if I'm 2 minutes over, you'll forgive me. Margin of error, plus or minus roughly 5 percentage points at the 95% level of confidence. We weight the data to compensate for the issues that arise when you interview by telephone. And where appropriate, where the questions are the same, I'm going to compare them to 2013. This chart and the one that follows I view as important because it's intended to give you some confidence that our sample statistics, the third column says sample at the top, are in line with what we know about the community from census and other sources. So as you look down from gender and age and distribution across ward and home ownership and race, you can see that we are very close in our sample to what the community population parameters are. How about overall impressions? So what we learn here is that more than 9 out of 10 residents praise Dublin as a excellent place to live, to work, retire. So if you look at the excellence in goods, you've got 98%, same this year, last year for as a place to live, no change in a place to work, very little, but a smaller but growing majority praised the city as a place to retire. Don't you just wonder who the 2% is? Like 98%. Who were those folks? So then we asked an open-ended question, what do you like most about living in Dublin? And what you can see here, this is called a wordle or a word cloud, and the size of the word represents the number of people who responded with a comment like this, and you can see what jumps out is good city services, schools, safe communities, sense of community, bike paths. This is open-ended, top of mind, what residents like most. And then if you then ask the community, well, what do you think the top 2 priorities ought to be for city officials? Well, schools, traffic, safety. And this represents 344 respondents. Some folks couldn't answer the question, didn't answer the question. Public facilities, city services. So here we ask about parks and swimming pools all the way down that list. And what's striking about it is the blue portion of the bars are very satisfied. The skimpy green portions are somewhat satisfied. And if you look at the totals, what you discover real quickly is that there's almost nobody dissatisfied. Small numbers. And as a consequence, if you look to the right, and this is a pattern you'll see on other slides, that column represents the shift from 2013 in very satisfieds. Because if you look at the shift between the total length of the bar this year to 3 years ago, you see very little change. And in fact, on this slide, you see very little change, even with the very satisfieds. So across this dimension, you see 9 out of 10 or better satisfied, with the exception being parking in historic Dublin. How about satisfaction with city services? So here, with the exception of snow removal and mosquito control, you see all of the very satisfieds roughly similar to last year. And when you look at the total length of the bar, you see on all of those services, including snow removal and mosquito control, you've got better than 9 out of 10 satisfied. How about city officials? The majority of residents are very satisfied with how city officials maintain streets and roads and architectural standards, manage the city's finances, and plan for the future. So if you look, that dark blue part of the bar, very satisfied, 8 percentage points higher for managing the city's finances than it was 3 years ago, up 4 percentage points, up 2 percentage points. But again, no matter what dimensions we measure, virtually all of them, you see 9 out of 10 or better satisfied. Satisfaction is lowest with managing the flow of traffic, and this shouldn't be surprising, and in some way is consistent with the Wordle I showed you earlier. When people volunteered, traffic was an issue, and here you can see it's the lowest, but even having said that, it's almost 8 out of 10 satisfied. More than 2 out of 5 residents are very satisfied with how city officials provide and solicit information. So if you see on the right it says NA, that means that question wasn't asked in the 2013 edition of the survey. And then fewer, but still almost 8 out of 10, said either very or somewhat satisfied to listening to the concerns of local residents before making important decisions. And that's sort of interesting. It's almost always lower because sometimes it's hard for folks to tell if you listened to them or if you agreed with them. So it's like if you make a customer service phone call, it's hard to separate out bad news from bad service. So it's almost always the case where the listening numbers are lower than the other 2 numbers. How about the police department? So more than 8 out of 10 residents are very satisfied with the Dublin police, up from 2013. But if you look at those bars this year, 99% of the 400 residents we interviewed said they were somewhat or very satisfied. I mean, in some of the work we do, it wouldn't be all that surprising if those bars were turned upside down, where the very satisfieds would be a smaller portion of the bar, and the somewhat satisfieds would be the larger portion. So these numbers are impressive. And then we know that 8 out of 10 residents agree strongly, that's the blue portion of the bar, that the Dublin police keep neighborhoods safe, treat local residents courteously, and are well-trained, competent professionals. And if you look at the numbers compared to last year, you see very little change. Fewer, but still a substantial majority, are equally pleased with how the police communicate with the community, and that's a new question. So even though that number is lower than the other 3 dimensions we measured, it's still better than 9 out of 10 are satisfied. The Bridge Street District. Awareness of the Bridge Street District this year is virtually universal. So if you think back to when we asked this question in 2013 and what was going on, about half the community was aware, and 20% or less were very familiar. Now you have, not only is everyone almost aware, but the folks that are very familiar outweigh the folks that are only somewhat familiar by a lot. So then we asked, well, what are your overall impressions of the Bridge Street District? And here, 9 out of 10 have positive impressions of the Bridge Street District. And if you zoom around the chart, around the pie, you'll see 40% almost very positive, about half somewhat positive, 10% 1 in 10, somewhat negative, and a very small percentage, very negative impressions. So then the question might be, well, why would people be positive about the Bridge Street District? And this represents 345 respondents, and people are hungry, I guess. So if you look at that, I mean, there's some interesting specific things like restaurants and shops, but there's also sort of broader issues like it's forward-looking, it's a good use of existing land, it's well-planned. Some of the things I know Terry's been working on, it's focus on walking. So a lot of the messaging you see reflected in here.
Are these words that the residents offered?
Yes.
Okay.
And the size of these words
Yes.
represent the number of mentions. So you can see the question down at the bottom. Why, in other words, are your impressions? So this is completely open-ended. But then we said, okay, so what are the reasons for negative impressions among the 51 respondents who had them? And here, probably not surprising, you can see traffic is an issue, being overbuilt for the area, too urban, not needed, not enough input from the community is now smaller. But this represents, again, traffic, for example, is clearly the most commonly mentioned issue among the 51 respondents who responded to the question. 9 out of 10 residents agree that the Bridge Street District will make Dublin more attractive to young professionals, that's that top bar, strengthen the local economy, that's the middle bar, and will enhance Dublin's reputation. So almost no difference across those three dimensions, very strong. However, fewer agree that Bridge Street District will improve the city's appeal among residents planning to retire, but not every resident's planning to retire. So if you look at the folks who are 55 or older, you can see there's a little bit more agreement among those folks than there are among younger folks. Half the residents are satisfied with the amount of public input as plans for the Bridge Street District developed. 1 in 5 has no opinion, that's kind of the purple slice, and 1 in 4 feels that more input was needed. That's the green slice. As a result of road work and other construction in the Bridge Street District, 1 resident in 5 reported that driving is worse than expected, but an equal number described driving in Dublin as better than expected. That's kind of a wash, with almost 60% saying it was pretty much what I expected. Then we have a question about information. So 6 out of 10 residents are satisfied with the amount of information the city provides on the Bridge Street District. 1 out of 3 wants more information. So you wonder, well, what additional information do you want? And what you learn is that half of that 34%, the 47%, they don't know what they want. They just know they have too little information and they want more. And then some people were specific. They wanted project timelines, road closure information, stores that are coming, impact on parking. This is not to say that that information isn't already available, because I'm sure it is. But what it says is folks are not being active in getting it. So there's one thing to provide it, and there's one thing to keep pushing it at them. Because if you didn't have to do that, McDonald's wouldn't be on TV every night on every channel. You know, it's not easy. Seniors. Couple of new questions this year. So here, among residents 65 or older, more than 6 out of 10 live in a freestanding home. The remaining seniors are as likely to rent as to own a condo. That's the 19 and the 16%, but 65 or older. So then I look back at, well, what about 55 or older? And what you can see is the 55 or older crowd, 71% still own their home, and smaller percentages own a condo or they rent. So this was the lead-in to this following question. As they look to the future, most seniors, 65 or older, are planning to stay in Dublin in their current home. So the big slice of the pie is to stay in Dublin, and then the blue portion of the bar is they're going to remain in their home, and a relatively small number are planning to downsize. But that's the 65 or older crowd. Many people have already either moved out of the community or they've downsized already. So if you look at the 55 or older crowd, what you see is only 60% are planning to stay in Dublin because you can't control the weather or where their grandchildren live, yet anyway. And a larger number of that 60%, this is now 26%, are planning to downsize. So as you think about living arrangements or living options in the Bridge Street District, you can see that might be an opportunity for those 26%, for that 26%. Okay, the arts. This is a new section. So we asked questions about the arts, and what we've learned is most residents are somewhat or very satisfied with Dublin's art-related venues, programming, installations, and galleries. And those satisfaction numbers don't look all that different than the numbers we saw for the services provided by the city, except to say that the dark blue portion of the bar is probably shorter than the green portion of the bar. Then we said open-ended. So what would you like to see in terms of programming or venues involving the performing arts? And what you see is 60% almost couldn't come up with anything. And then of those who said something, the numbers are small, single digits, mid-single digits, with the exception of concerts. Don't mistake this for a lack of interest. Two things are true about these numbers. It's open-ended, so you call at dinner. People may not be thinking of something, which is not to say that when you put something in front of them, they may find it of interest. And the other thing is that these single-digit numbers tell you essentially the number of people interested, but it doesn't tell you how deep their interest is. So for example, in New Albany, they have that speakers bureau. So if you talk to the executive director of the foundation, he'll tell you it's the same small number of people come every time. They love it. So for them, it's a deeply held need, but it doesn't affect that many people. And when you see these small numbers, you shouldn't think a small number reflects low interest as well. It might, but we don't know that because we didn't ask the interest, level of interest question. Intensity question. Digital communications. Since 2013, the city's digital platforms have become more popular as a primary source of information about Dublin. So you can see a little stair-step pattern here. City website up, city social networking sites up, e-news from Dublin up. TV, you know, it's funny. TV might not even be considered digital anymore. You know, it's like, it's kind of static as opposed to all these instant ways to communicate. And what you discover is that 52% of our sample consider at least one of the city's digital platforms a primary source of information about Dublin. Half, a little bit better than half. Big change since 2013. And then this is sort of interesting. So this year, compared with 2013, more residents have visited a city website, that's the first pair of bars, received news about Dublin on Facebook, that's the middle set of bars, and follow the city on Twitter. And it's sort of interesting that if you want to get a sense of how digital the community is, you can see, have a Facebook account, better than 7 out of 10, have a Twitter account, use LinkedIn, use Instagram, but look at that last number. 85% of the community uses social media. But that's everybody. Let's look at the folks that are 35 or younger, or actually younger than 35. Look what happens to the 85% to use social media. It became 98%. So that column, the column that popped up, is the future. Those are folks who will, if they stay in the community, will replace those folks that aren't social media users. So you can see just a huge, huge, huge penetration of social media in Dublin. Almost every resident has internet access at home, and almost as many have smartphones. And this is interesting because where are people accessing the internet? Half of them are using their phones to access the internet. You know, tablets and desks and laptops are much smaller percentages. And then this will make you wish you owned Apple stock. Not only does 9 out of 10 have a smartphone, but 68% have the same brand. They have iPhones. Though a majority of residents are satisfied with their internet speed, fewer are very satisfied today than in 2013. So not much change in choice, not much change in price, but speed still 79%, but that blue portion of the bar was 10 percentage points longer 3 years ago. Highlights. Residents continue to feel that the quality of life in Dublin is excellent. On virtually every dimension, satisfaction is 9 out of 10, and where it's not, the issues are obvious. Traffic. They praise Dublin's public facilities and city services, from parks and bike paths to law enforcement and leaf collection. Residents also praise city officials as they manage Dublin's growth and communicate with the public. Residents are concerned, however, with parking in Dublin's historic district and traffic. Awareness of the Bridge Street district is now almost universal, and most residents have positive impressions of the Bridge Street district. They agree it will strengthen the local economy and enhance Dublin's appeal and reputation. But many want more information. Many, to me, as that's a healthy third, want more information. Finally, the number of residents who rely on the city's digital platforms for information about Dublin is substantial and growing. Questions?
So just curious, why 400? Was that your population? And I assume it was randomly selected of the, what, roughly 11,000 voting homes?
We just looked at people we knew who liked you.
That's what we thought.
Yeah, it's random. Why 400? So there's a sampling error line. The larger the sample, the smaller the margin of error. But there's also a budget line. The larger the sample, the more it costs. And it just seems kind of like miraculously, no matter what community I go to, those lines cross at 400. What larger samples do for you is not so much reduce the error in the total pool, because the numbers are pretty reliable, but it enables you to look at subsets more effectively. So if you said, well, let's look at millennials, let's look at women millennials, well, then all of a sudden you've got a much smaller pool with much larger sampling error. And yes, it's an entirely random selection.
Have we, and I don't know, this might not have been part of the study, but are there other cities that are similar to us that we can use this data to compare and contrast ourselves with others?
Yes, so you can go online to Powell. We've done that 3 times. We're just about to start the 4th time. You can go to the city of Delaware. You can go to Grove City. We've done Grove City since 1992, every 2 years. And if you wait a little bit, we're just starting Whitehall. So, and not every question is exact, but you'll get a sense of, but I mean, these data are not all that different from the NCS survey. It's similar. I mean, NCS doesn't have Bridge Street in as much detail, or the arts in the same way, but similar. But yeah, go online. Because their city websites like yours post the results.
Anyone else? Down here? Down here? What happens if someone hangs up on you? If you're in the middle of it and they hang up, do you consider that a completed survey? Or
Okay, a couple of things. So lots of people, Sandra and I had this conversation. It's sort of my job to gather the data, help you write the questions. It's your job to get people to want to do it. And I'm serious about that, making an effort to say, do this for us because, well, if you look back to the past survey, this is what we did as a result of it. People get tired of doing surveys if they don't see some result. So we had, for the 400 interviews, 600 people refused in some form or other. That's just not for a community as articulate and as well-educated as Dublin. I mean, I know people are busy, but this is people, not households we called that didn't answer. This is people who refused. And part of that comes from the city promoting the survey to reduce that number. If a person says, I can't finish it, we'll call them back whenever they want. Some people just hang up, and we call back and, hey, we lost the connection. And sometimes we sort of shame people into finishing, but sometimes you don't. And we wouldn't count that as a completed interview.
So there were at least 400 completely.
Completed, every, now, some people might not answer a particular question and they get recorded as a don't know.
Right.
But start to finish. And that 22 minutes is the full average length of a questionnaire.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Dana, what do we do with this information? Like you mentioned, they want to know what the result, what do we do to push this information out?
Right, so we'll post this information online, so it'll be available to everyone. You can look at the data yourself. If you want a copy, I think we typically have copies around here. There'll be a copy in council chambers. And, you know, as Marty pointed out, the most important thing is how do you action it, the results. I think a lot of these results are very consistent with what we've seen in the past, traffic, some of the parking issues, which you're addressing in historic Dublin. And you've had a long history of responding to these, be it parkland issues or types of programs in parks, things like that. So we'll continue to do that. And as you go through, one of the timing of this to be such that you kind of had this background information going to your retreat this Thursday, Friday, so you can also be sort of cognizant of these kind of things as you think about the future of Dublin and some of the things that you want to focus on going into the future. So,
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Marty. Thank you very much for all your efforts.
Dublin Arts Council, David? Welcome.
Thank you. So thank you for allowing me to present this evening. It's my pleasure to update you on the progress of the next Dublin Art and Public Places public artwork and to submit the jury's recommendation for the $150,000 all-inclusive commission. To begin, I've prepared an overview of the process thus far. As you'll see, the finalists visited Thaddeus Kosciuszko's park in December. They were joined by members of the jury and met with the Polish American Club of Columbus to learn more about General Kosciuszko, and they spoke to a local expert in Wyandot Indian history in the area. I'd also like you to see the makeup of the accomplished jurors that were assembled for this project. They represent many different perspectives and bring great strength to the evaluation process. I thank them for their service and dedication to this project. They meticulously reviewed 149 applications from 37 states and selected 3 finalists, all world-class artists for this commission. The 3 finalists presented their proposals to the jury and a gathering of approximately 40 members of the community on Monday, February 29th at Abbey Theatre of Dublin. The jurors and members of the audience posed questions to the artists and were encouraged to submit comment cards at the presentation's conclusion to register their preference for a proposed artwork. All comment cards were reviewed during the jury's deliberation process. Artist Ilan Averbach proposed Dreams and Gravity, a sculpture of 2 monumental copper heads balanced with seemingly floating stones overlooking one of the park's fishing ponds. Artist Po-Shu Wang proposed We the Flatlanders, a sonic installation consisting of tuning fork elements inspired by the earth and sky, accompanied by a series of harmonic scale resonators along the park's walking trails. And artist Olga Zimska proposed Feather Point and Universal Gathering. The jury unanimously recommends artist Olga Zimska for the commission. Their selection is supported by the audience comment cards, which resoundingly support this choice. The next few slides will provide an overview of Olga's past work and her proposal for the Thaddeus Kosciuszko Park. Olga is an Ohio artist currently living and working from her studio in Cleveland. She received a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Columbus College of Art and Design and lived and worked in Columbus for 10 years. Olga, born in 1976, is the daughter of Polish immigrants who came to America from their home in Warsaw. She spent her early years exclusively speaking the Polish language. The public artworks pictured here were created with locally reclaimed materials during a residency in Poland. Olga has created public artworks all over the world, completing 11 commissions in the past 7 years. The artwork on the left, consisting of bamboo fronds, is titled Stillness in Motion and can be found in Korea. The sculpture on the right is installed in Italy's Dolomite Mountains. Olga's vision for Dublin includes an intersection of inspirations, found both in the coat of arms of Kosciuszko's native Poland and the ceremonial headdress of Bill Moose, known as the last Wyandot American Indian tribe to live in Ohio. Olga felt both men were humanitarians, valued freedom, and treasured the natural environment. Feather Point, pictured here, will be a 21-foot-tall cast aluminum sculpture inspired by an eagle feather and patterned from trees on the site. Olga will involve the community in gathering the reclaimed materials, which will be used as a mold for her metal casting. The softly lit sculpture will be visible from the intersection of Hard Road and Riverside Drive day and night. The site-specific artwork will serve as a landmark, creating the mark of a quill pen, drawing awareness to the park and its history. A finished layer of concrete at the base of the sculpture will be imprinted with text that illustrates the corollary between General Kosciuszko and Bill Moose, including such themes as freedom, nature, and humanity. The second sculptural element, Universal Gathering, will provide a contemplative, life-cast tree stump accented with mosaic of aggregate stone and sand, and sited in view of the heritage white oak that once served as a ceremonial site for the Wyandot tribe. So Dublin Arts Council heartily supports the jury's recommendation that the Public Art Commission for the Thaddeus Kosciuszko Park be awarded to artist Olga Zimska for Feather Point and Universal Gathering to be installed in the fall of 2016. We respectfully request council approval to award the commission and to allow city staff to enter into contract with Ms. Zimska.
Thank you, David. John?
Do you have any questions?
No, I think the selection is excellent. And it's another one of these iconic monumental sculptures, I think, that makes people talk about Dublin. And General Ceausescu really deserves to be honored because he himself used to debate Thomas Jefferson over slavery, and at the founding of our country, he realized that it wasn't all-inclusive and should have been. And the guy was really so far ahead of his time. Just a great American, and we were fortunate to have his land here in Dublin that he was given for his service in the Revolutionary War. So I'd like to make a motion for approval. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank you, David, for your leadership of this effort and your panel of jurists, for all their hard work. And also, as we always do, including the public in this process.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, David. We've had some issues in the past with base and installation costs. I presume that's all considered in this award?
Yes, and Kurt Getman with the city is working with the engineer staff, and so we're going to put everybody together as a team to make sure it's realized within the time frame and within budget.
Very good. I'll second the motion.
And, another good thing too, Mike, is that we're always looking for art that's sustainable, and this is done in aluminum, correct?
Yes, cast.
So it should have a very, very long life with very little maintenance, which is really important.
Good.
And then the lighting is just a fantastic touch.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this. This is going to be so cool.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Anybody else down here? Anybody? We have a motion and a second. Ann, please call roll.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Ms. Ludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Thank you, David, for all
Thank
your
you
work.
very much.
For coming in. Citizen comments, I don't think anyone signed in, Ann, did they? Is anybody here intending to testify about anything?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. Hearing nothing, we will move forward to the consent agenda. Does anyone request that any of the items on the consent, on the 7 items that are on the consent agenda. Would anyone like for any of them to be removed?
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Ann?
Ms. Salee? Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Second reading on ordinances, ordinances 06-16. Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to execute necessary conveyance documents to acquire a 0.023 acre more or less permanent easement, 0.016 acre more or less permanent easement, and a 0.014 acre more or less permanent easement from the Muirfield Association from the reserve areas located along Glick Road for construction of the Glick Road shared use path.
Dana?
Good evening, members of council. As stated in the title, the city is preparing to construct a shared-use connection path adjacent to Glick Road as part of the Section 1 of the Glick Road Shared Use Path project. And after engaging in amicable discussions, the grantor has agreed to donate the permanent easement to the city at no cost, which we greatly appreciate. And staff recommends council approve ordinance 06-16.
Questions, comments from council?
I just have a quick one. Dana, what's the projected timeline on the construction?
I do not know offhand. I'll have to check and advise on that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Ann?
Sorry, Ms. Salee? Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
And Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ordinance 07-16. as
Amending the
amended.
annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2016.
Angel?
Good evening, members of council. At the first reading of this ordinance 2 weeks ago, there were some questions asked about some particulars with some of these funding requests. So we've responded with a memo. Hopefully that answers any outstanding questions, but as a whole, the majority of these supplemental appropriations relate to our debt payments that are paid from TIF revenues. So we just appropriate those funds from our TIF revenues to make those semi-annual debt payments. We have another component of appropriations in here that are related to capital projects, and in this memo, articulated what the projects were and specifically in which CIP they've been approved. And then finally, at the last meeting, there were some questions about the reforestation funds. And we've included an explanation in there, but in summary, those are simply funds that the city receives when we have payments in lieu of parkland dedication that are set aside specifically for reforestation within city properties. So these funds are just used to really offset any other general fund expenditures that are used for the same purpose. It's just another source of revenue that is there.
Thank you for that additional information. And so if I understand it, the reforestation is a staff-level decision, right? So this is just the money moving over to allow them to make those decisions.
That is correct. Otherwise, there are funds within the parks budget as part of the annual appropriations that are used for reforestation as well.
Chris?
I have a couple questions. On sections 3 and 4, thank you, by the way, for providing a bit of additional information. Sections 3 and 4 address funding to transfer from assessment debt service funds to the general obligation debt service funds. Can you give me some examples of where those special assessment debt service funds came from?
Yes, there were historically, there's been 2 debt issuances that have been done for revenue's been generated from a special assessment. I believe one was in Ballantrae and another, I can't remember offhand what the other one was, but over the course of time, these properties are assessed, the amount that is determined when the ordinance is passed. That doesn't always correlate to how long the debt is outstanding, so the city has paid that debt off, and now any residual that comes in just gets transferred over into our general bond retirement fund.
And where do those residuals come from?
From the property owners, as they have paid those as special assessments as part of their property taxes. So when we establish a special assessment, it's for a set period of time, but as you know, sometimes people pay their property taxes, they don't pay their property taxes, so it doesn't always match up exactly with
for example, a 20-year debt issuance that we might have. So we might have a couple of years where you've got some money still coming in, but it's still within the parameters of the original intent and what was originally agreed to by that property owner when the assessment was placed.
And do you know why in Ballantrae, what the purpose of the
I
special
believe it
assessment
was
was?
streetlights.
Okay.
I can follow up with a memo or a correspondence with you as to what these two particular special assessments were for. I'm sorry, I don't have
I guess
that.
part of my question then is, for the special assessments that were levied, was all of the money for the special assessment spent in that area?
Yes.
Or are any of the residuals that are remaining, is that excess collections?
When the special assessment is determined at the onset, you have to lay out, and I believe come up with how you're going to levy that assessment on. So based on what your debt schedule is, based on the amount of the project up front, the interest rate you are going to charge the property owner, because what it is the city's making that debt payment, and then they're agreeing to repay that over a certain period of time as they pay their property taxes.
Okay. I don't know that, well, maybe we can go through them one by one, but we have a lot of TIF transfers, and my question would revolve around, on these TIF transfers, how do we know, how do we attribute what part of the work or what vicinity it was to the original TIF district? When I'm looking here at Section 7, Section 12, Section 14, 15, 17, it doesn't have hard ties to what the money was spent on.
So when council approves the annual capital improvement program, there might be, for example, $500,000 appropriated for a bike path. Let's take the Smiley Park multi-use path connection project. We don't, at the onset of the year, when we appropriate dollars for expenditure in the upcoming year, we do not appropriate TIF funds, and that's because we are not, in most cases, we don't appropriate advances. Many of our TIF funds operate through an advance until those TIF revenues materialize. So we are able to start projects and conduct projects throughout the course of the year by using either general fund dollars or capital dollars that are transferred or advanced into these TIF funds, so that we don't have to wait until the money's been generated through the TIF to make the improvement. So we're getting a head start on projects, with then the repayment of these advances coming back over the 30-year life of the TIF. So that is the reason why at the beginning of the year, or at the end of the year in December, when council passes the annual appropriation for the upcoming year, we don't include TIFs with that. But through approval of the capital improvement budget, there is the framework for that upcoming year's capital expenditures. So for example, with this Smiley Park multi-use path connection, there was $205,500 programmed in 2016 for that project that council gave the blessing on. The actual dollars, putting that $205,500 into that particular account, is not traditionally done here until multiple times during the course of the year because of that advance issue, because we are not required by law to budget for advances.
My last question revolves around, many of these are tied to ordinance numbers 7913, 8013, things of that nature. In section 18, it talks about professional planning and design services at $2,055,000. Then there's a $25,000 that's tied to easement acquisitions and paths. Do we have ordinances or resolutions to tie the $2,055,000 number too?
That again was part of the 2016 through 2020 CIP, in which funds were allocated each year for project management within the Bridge Street District. So that's what that $2 million is related to, the 2016 allocation within the CIP document.
Okay, so that doesn't come out in equal parts, we take all of that out at one point in time?
Yes, in this particular case, we are engaging in a full-year contract, or an existing contract has been modified for what's anticipated this year. So that's why we entered into a contract or modified an existing contract for that full amount, which is why we're asking for the full appropriation at this point in time.
Okay, thank you.
And I will follow up with you on the special assessments. I'm sorry I don't have that at my fingertips.
Great,
Some
appreciate it.
of that might become more clear when we go through the CIP process this August, as you actually see the transactions and how we do business.
Right. And as I might have mentioned last time, we just implemented a new financial system. We're going to be thinking through our appropriation process as we come up on next year, and is there a better way to do it so that we don't have to come forward to council throughout the course of the year?
Certainly would, to really understand all that, you'd have to do a tremendous amount of research on TIFs, where they are, what all of the projects contained in a specific TIF, the status of them, and where you are in terms of collections.
Certainly, we tried to explain all of that within our capital document, but again, and as we go through the projects during our capital improvement budget hearings, we explain where we're going to fund these projects from, but yes, absent that conversation and that document, it is difficult to make those connections.
Even maybe in looking ahead when we do that, it would be good to have not just a moment in time in that, but the historical performance as well, to me, would be very helpful.
For the TIFs?
Yes, each individual TIF, and where the projects occurred in relation to the TIF, where the project's finished, and the cost per, if you had different roadway improvements at different locations, not everything in a TIF, not all of the money is spent, within the property limits of like the Vrabel TIF.
Well, we're required, first of all, we have an annual tax incentive review council meeting where we do go over the prior year's revenue and expenditures and year-to-date actually lifetime-to-date investment, both public and private, in each of our TIF areas. We do have to make sure that with any TIF and the expenditures that there is a clear nexus in benefit. We can't spend money if it doesn't benefit the TIF area itself. So when we come to council and ask for approval of the majority of our TIFs, those that are our normal commercial TIFs, under section 5709.40 of Ohio Revised Code, we have to actually articulate what those private or public improvements are going to be. So they're all laid out as to, we can use this TIF for these particular improvements. So we definitely provide council with that annual Turk report after we prepare it for the Turk meeting, and then usually the chair of the finance committee reports back to council at the next council meeting as to the status of each of our TIFs.
Thank you, appreciate the help.
Okay, one thing I was going to suggest is, for any resident or council member would like to come in and review, how many TIF districts are there? 20?
Over 30.
Over 30. So it's each district is generating funds coming in. Some of that, as you've seen tonight, is in arrears. Sometimes there's closing out of projects associated with that specific TIF district that's defined with what that money can specifically be used for within that district. So it's an ongoing flow, and because some of these are over 30 years, they're paying debt. Sometimes they're paying cash. Sometimes these capital projects are subsidized through cash in the capital budget. So it's often better to sit down, probably TIF district by TIF district, because there's 30 of them. They're very individualized, not in terms of what the city can spend on, but the projects that get generated within those districts. And because these things live for a while, and you're building like Emerald 8 over many phases, over many years, and there's other intersection improvements and things that can be done within that district, It's hard to, you can't paint a broad brush over all of them. You have to sit down and really drill down on each one of those districts. But we're happy to do that with any and all those. So.
So beyond staff oversight, council oversight, finance committee oversight, one of the members of that TIF review is it the county auditor?
Yes.
That comes in and actually sits down and goes through that in that meeting that we have once a year that reviews each and every TIF. And he has his eye on the ball on that as well.
Yes, there's also township representation,
Right.
school district representation.
Yeah, Chris might not be aware of that, but two people from city council usually sit on that board, and I think you're the head of finance and the head of community development, myself, and we review every TIF annually and go through all this.
Just to make it interesting, I mean, just sitting here, we've modified TIFs and added things. So, we find that we can pay for an improvement out of an existing TIF district rather than creating a new one. We modify an existing. And so there's all those layers in there too. So, I mean, each TIF district may have a handful of modifications as well. Angel, if you would be so kind, if you could, when you respond to Ms. Amorose Grooms, if you could just, put it in packet or whatever so we can all see.
Absolutely.
Just for curiosity's sake. Because I remember that we had one, but I don't remember what we did. Thanks.
Anything else? Chris?
Nope, thank you, appreciate the answers, Angel.
Nobody else? Okay. Ann?
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Abstain.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ordinance 08-16. Ann?
Authorizing provision of certain incentives to Smith's Medical ASD, Inc. to induce it to retain an office and its associated operations and workforce within the city, authorizing execution of an economic development agreement.
Yeah, Jeremiah Grassi will introduce this.
Jeremiah?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. No additional information from the last council memo. We do have some representatives from the company here to speak and answer any questions you may have about the company and the agreement tonight. We have Chris Bresnahan, who's the Director of Contract Administration and Finance, and Kurt Bendick, who's Vice President of Global Financial Services. So I'd invite them to the podium to speak and share a little bit about their company.
Sure. Gentlemen, welcome. Come on up.
Thanks for having us. So to give you a bit of background, Smiths Medical is roughly a $1.3 billion global company, and we are a division of a larger company called Smiths Group, which is headquartered in London. We have about 8,000 people around the world, about 500 here in Dublin, and I'll share a bit more information on that in a couple of minutes. And actually, some of you may remember a company called Medex, which was a publicly traded medical device manufacturer headquartered here in Dublin. So Smiths Group acquired them back in 2005. So we've maintained quite a presence here, despite the fact that our headquarters has actually moved to St. Paul. So we do employ about 500 people here in the city of Dublin. We have two locations. The first is our shared services center, which runs our global operation for North America for customer service and the key finance functions and my central controllership and treasury team. And then we have the manufacturing plant on Shire Rings Road, which you may be familiar with, across from Perimeter Loop, and we have about 350 people there, which is one of our 15 manufacturing plants. So we've been looking to renew our lease at the Metro Place Shared Services Facility, and we've scoured the market. I think we visited about 15 different locations, most of them here in Dublin. We'd certainly like to stay here. And we're finalizing a negotiation with our new landlord. We're right next to the Embassy Suites in Metro Place North. We occupy the second floor of that building, about 34,000 square feet. So we're looking to make some upgrades to our facility to improve security, to just update the space aesthetically. It's been 10 years. And to make some improvements in terms of open collaborative space for our team. So certainly we're going to partner with our landlord with some funding, but are looking to partner with the city as well. And would certainly appreciate your support going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for coming in. Mr. Bendick, do you want to comment? Oh, he's Bendick, then you are Mr. Bresnahan. Anything you'd like to say or add?
No, I'd just add to what Kurt said. I mean, we were here 10 years ago in front of the council when we moved into that building. I've been with the company for 20 years, and 16 I've been in the fine city of Dublin. The other 4 were to the city to the south. So just great for our partnership, and Kurt touched on the security and safety of our employees. We're actually partnering with the police department to do some active shooter awareness for our employees so they know what to do if whatever happened to happen. So we have a great partnership with the city and very appreciative of all that you guys have done for us.
Thank you very much. Mike?
So how do we get your headquarters from St. Paul back here?
Well, we actually just moved to a new facility there and spent quite a bit of money, so unfortunately, I think we're pretty well locked in.
Well, when that lease is up in 2 years, give us a call.
Will do. Trust me, I'd like it to be here, but.
Hold up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Tim?
No, I just want to say thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you. Ann?
Thank you.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, appreciate it. Ordinance 14-16, Ann?
Declaring the improvement of certain parcels of real property in the city's Bridge Street district to be a public purpose and exempt from taxation, providing for collection, deposit of service payments, specifying the purposes for which those payments may be expended, authorizing compensation payments to the Dublin City School District and the Tolles Career and Technical Center, and declaring an emergency.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, John. Angel?
Thank you. As Ann indicated, this is an ordinance establishing a TIF under Ohio Revised Code, Chapter 5709.41 on Block A within the Bridge Park development. It is outlined on the screen, and you would know it as the site where the hotel and the conference center are going to be located. Council has previously approved legislation establishing TIFs over Blocks B, which is immediately north of Block A, as well as Blocks C and Z as in zebra, which is on the west side of the river. Those were approved in September and October of 2015. The creation of this TIF is required under the development agreement between the city and Crawford Hoyne and will allow for service payments to be assessed on the property owners within Block A in lieu of property taxes, although the amount will be the same. These service payments are pledged to fund the community facilities, namely the conference center and the 5 parking structures that are part of the new community authority. The creation of this TIF is permitted under the cooperative agreement between Dublin City Schools and the city, as well as the agreement that the city has with Tolles JVS. We are requesting that this ordinance be approved as an emergency, and while it might sound contrary to common sense, this type of particular TIF, if not passed as an emergency, takes effect immediately, which means that if construction would not happen immediately, we could possibly lose some of our time on a 30-year TIF window. So with the emergency language, the way it's written, it allows for the exemption to begin the first year in which the improvements show up on the tax duplicate. So that ensures that we get to maximize the TIF as opposed to burning some time off during a construction period if time would be delayed. We are requesting, as I mentioned, emergency language at the second reading at your next council meeting.
Council questions? Christina?
Yeah, so I understand from a financial perspective the need for the emergency language, but I wanted you to maybe spend a little bit more time connecting the dots for me between the financial aspect and sort of the health, safety, and wellness of our community, because that's really what emergency legislation is about. You know, I think that there are definitely needs for emergency legislation. I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we've connected those dots, because it's not just, to me, the financial language isn't quite enough to do that, you know, but I want to make that connection for us as council so that we can make really good decisions on behalf of our constituents. So if you could just tie that together for me, talk me through that just a little bit, I would really appreciate it.
Sure, we'll make sure to include that in your next packet.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I have a
Chris?
couple questions. There is not a residential component in this phase, correct?
That is correct. Now, having said that, in previous legislation, we have layered the incentive district over this entire area. But this particular TIF is just the commercial TIF for Block A.
Okay. I too have real concerns about the emergency legislation. Again, I don't think that we have crossed the hurdle with respect to the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, or welfare. If strictly if financial was enough to get over that hurdle, everything that we do would be an emergency. Our last vote would have been an emergency. I don't know that because of money, it can be an emergency. This is the second emergency that we've had in as many weeks. And I certainly cannot support that without having a clearer definition of something more than just money. You know, that is something we need to take very seriously, because we really take back a lot of the rights of the folks within our community when we do emergency legislation. And I don't know that this crosses the hurdle for us to, you know, our charter is our Constitution. It has clearly defined reasons for us to make emergency decisions, and I'm just not sure we're there on this, but thank you.
Well, I will just comment at this point that our reasoning for this will be under the welfare component of that, meaning that it will be tied to funding, it will be tied to the notion of trying to collect on the TIF as soon as we can. That's will pretty much be the answer. I'll give you that up front now. We'll do the best we can to explain that, and of course, you know, you'll need to make your decision. If you don't want it to be an emergency, that's fine. It doesn't have to be, but that will be our justification. That's what we'll come back with.
Is it possible to make an estimation of the dollar figure associated with that?
We'll assess
The
that.
best you
That to
can.
you,
Okay,
right?
I think that'd probably be helpful.
We'll give you an order of magnitude on that.
Yeah. Anybody else down here? You got? I'm sorry, Chris, anything else? Was that-
No, thank you,
know?
appreciate it.
All right, there will be a second hearing at the next council meeting, which will not be until April the 11th. Resolution 15-16, Ann?
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Dublin Arts Council, which amends a lease agreement previously executed by the parties.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Tim. Angel? Jennifer?
I'm actually
Jennifer?
going to take this. Good evening, council. At the Finance Committee meeting of the whole on February 22nd, we discussed the current funding model for the Dublin Arts Council. And at that meeting, there was a motion to change the endowment. What we've prepared is an addendum to the existing agreement between the DAC and the City of Dublin. And instead of the 25% of projected hotel motel tax, the new modification will be 25% of the actual hotel motel tax that's collected by the city. So we just made two modifications to one section in an addendum to the existing agreement, and those are reflected in the attachment to the resolution. And we would just ask for your approval tonight.
And as I looked at it, Jennifer, Section 3 is the place where it says this could have a positive effect, or it could have a negative effect.
Correct.
And that's where that's taken into account.
We put in an acknowledgement that the funds will fluctuate now.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions, anyone? Ann?
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan? Yes. And Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Resolution 16-16. Do you have?
Appointing members to the various boards and commissions of the City of Dublin.
I'll introduce it.
It was handed out at the meeting on Friday.
Oh, can you go? I
Oh,
don't have
I'm
a
sorry.
copy of it. Okay, should I go through each one of these?
I thought we were doing that under committee reports.
Um,
I've got it right here.
You want to do it now?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do it now. Go ahead.
Go ahead, you're fine.
Well,
All right, I'll make a resolution. Resolution appointing members to the various boards and commissions.
do we have to list all these?
No, we're going to walk through them all one at a time. So basically, my motion is Victoria Newell is hereby reappointed to a 4-year term on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Chris Brown is hereby reappointed to a 4-year term on the Planning and Zoning Commission, such term expiring March 31st, 2020. David Rinaldi is hereby reappointed to a 3-year term on the Architectural Review Board, expiring March 31st, 2019. Shannon Stenberg is hereby reappointed to a 3-year term on the Architectural Review Board, such term expiring on March 31st, 2019. Philip Smith is hereby reappointed to a 3-year term as representative to the Dublin Convention and Visitors Bureau, term expiring March 31st, 2019. Denise Kessner is hereby reappointed to a 3-year term on the Personnel Board of Review, her term expiring on March 31st, 2019. Ryan Myers is hereby reappointed to a 3-year term on the Board of Zoning Appeals, such term expiring March 31st, 2019. Sarah Herbert is hereby appointed to a 3-year term on the Board of Zoning Appeals, such term expiring on March 31st, 2019. Julia Caruso is hereby appointed to a 2-year term on the Dublin Arts Council, such term expiring on March 31st, 2018. Lynn Reedy is hereby reappointed to a 1-year term on the Bridge Park New Community Authority, her term expiring March 31st, 2017. Rick Schwederman is hereby reappointed to a 1-year term on the Bridge Park New Community Authority, his term expiring on March 31st, 2017. William Root and Dale Saylor are hereby reappointed to a 2-year terms on the Tax Board of Review, such terms expiring on March 31st, 2018. Clayton Rose III is hereby appointed as the city manager's representative to the Tax Board of Review and will serve at the pleasure of the city manager. And that is my motion.
I will second that motion.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mr. Lechleiter?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose Grooms?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
The Community Entertainment District update. Terry? That's okay. I just thought because it was an administrative thing.
Thank you, members of council. As you'll recall, January 25th, we updated you and provided an overview of the statutory requirements for community entertainment districts and recommended a strategy for moving forward, which you so directed staff to do. The presentation tonight is going to outline the progress on this report and kind of seek further direction from council regarding the implementation of community entertainment districts. One of the big elements that we want to do is make sure that we got word out on this effort. Two well-advertised public meetings were held, one on February 11th and one on February 16th, at which staff met with folks from the public to answer any questions about the community entertainment district. Those comments were quite supportive from those who attended. We've made special outreach efforts, in particular to the Historic District Business Association, Visual Convention Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, and other historic district stakeholders, since our districts we're recommending are in fact including and impacting those areas. We also met last Friday with representatives from Dublin ACT Coalition to get them up to speed on this effort, seek their input, and they made some actually excellent suggestions just in terms of having some of our developers meet with their organization regarding some of the proactive strategies that could be utilized in these districts as an additional kind of safety precaution, which we're going to be facilitating here in the next few weeks. We're also going to be presenting to the Communications Advisory Committee, which we've used for a variety of kind of development and transportation-related initiatives, but also because they help additionally spread the word on this later this week. And we've used all of the Dublin social media website and traditional media to continue to roll out information on this subject. In essence, what we are recommending in terms of the first community entertainment districts to be formed in the city of Dublin is the creation of two new districts, one to be called the Bridge Park Community Entertainment District, and the other the Historic District Community Entertainment District. Bridge Park would include the Bridge Park East development, which includes all of the things that you've seen thus far presented in a variety of venues, including the restaurants, the hotels, and the other activities. It also includes the new senior housing project on the campus and shops at River Ridge, and would be located effectively just east of the new Riverside Drive. We'll show you a map of that shortly. A Historic District Community Entertainment District includes areas in and around the Historic District and has 11 existing restaurants that hold liquor permits. The Bridge Park West development with its restaurants, other mix of uses would be in there, as well as some additional development sites, and the proposed new library, and many of the public infrastructure investments contemplated along the river, and the roadway improvements associated with Riverside Drive. The new library are also within that district. This map depicts the outlines of those two districts. You'll notice in the blue on the left is the Historic District at CED. It's 81 acres. And if you recall last time, we were allowed one new permit per 5 acres. That peaked out at 15 permits. So beyond 75 acres, you get no more permits. So there's a 94 acre area on the west side of the river. It picks up all the investments in the public roads, the parks, the bridge, the Bridge Park West development, any library activity takes place in it, so it easily meets the $50 million threshold that's established by state statute. Notice that also, in addition to picking up those commercial properties in the historic district, also picks up the potential redevelopment area at Monterey and 161. We do bypass the Dublin Cemetery, the schools and stuff on this district. To the east, you'll see the 81-acre Bridge Park Community Entertainment District. Again, just by virtue of the private investments taking place there, but when combined with the public, easily meets the investment thresholds, picks up the entire Bridge Park project, plus the land to the north owned by Mr. Vrabel and his facility, as well as shops at River Ridge located south of 161. This graphic shows the 14 different permits by 13 different permit holders in the district who would have the option to sell their standard C5 permit, I believe it is, and purchase one of these permits within the district, probably at a much, much lower investment, so that it would be financially in their interest to do so. I think given the challenges some of those businesses face by virtue of all these public projects taking place in and around them, on that, providing these kind of benefits certainly seems very appropriate. In addition, just to the city's strategy and the kind of environments that are being created in and around the historic district.
Terry, may I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Those folks that currently hold a license, could they also buy one from the entertainment district? Or will we flood the market with all of these available ones
No,
at
in
one
fact,
point in time?
what I would expect they would do would be to sell their current permit, probably at a closer market rate, and that market is a much broader geography, anywhere where there's eligibility.
But can you hold two at once?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
That's
I don't think you could do permit futures on this or something.
Thanks.
But I do think there will be significant benefits. The only rationale, I think, to keep one of those permits would be if you want the mobility of that for some reason kind of moving forward on there. So we do think that will free up significant permits, again, for additional use in Dublin potentially. Based upon that, I'll have Jennifer Riedler here summarize what we're asking City Council to authorize this evening.
Yeah, in terms of next steps, what we'd like to ask council tonight is for a motion authorizing those steps outlined above. We've included the two applications for the two community entertainment districts that we're proposing in your packet. So we would authorize city manager to sign those applications, submit those to the Department of Development. Under state law, we have to give notice of the filing of those applications in a newspaper of general circulation, so it'll be the Dublin Villager for 2 consecutive weeks. Obviously, we're going to push that out on our social media, so we will do a lot more than just that basic notification. Also, under state law, we have to provide the application to the mayor for his review and recommendation to council prior to council considering the resolution. We would anticipate having all of that completed by the April 11th council meeting and would have that date for your public hearing where we can consider any additional public testimony.
Any questions?
I did, out of curiosity, call one of our stakeholders who happened to have a permit in the first area, and I asked him what his permit's value was, and he said $50,000. And he does appreciate the fact that the city of Dublin is actually possibly going to allow him a return of $47,000 in his pocket. So, I was just sort of wondering whether these things are worth $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000, or what the real value was, and he said his is $50,000. So we're actually doing a lot to help support our businesses.
Provides quite a nice benefit.
Yes. And it also will be a really important aspect to seeing that the Bridge Street area becomes successful. If you have a restaurant, that, you can have that ability to draw in people, which would augment the nightlife. So it's a really good hand-in-glove type of situation. Thank you.
Well, it also frees up the licenses from those who sell them to the larger area for other businesses who may not have one right now, for them to be able to purchase it now. Obviously, it's at a premium, but it does free up that license. So that's another benefit to the surrounding areas as well.
The area on the west side of the river did not run all the way out to French Road.
No, it did not.
Once these areas are set, they are set, correct? Or can they be
They
expanded?
can be adjusted. I think the thing that isn't clear in statute is where are you in the $50 million investment threshold when you want to adjust them? That isn't clear. Maybe Jennifer has more clarity on it, but they can be adjusted.
Right, we would just have to make sure that the modification, because we have to make that financial justification, and so to amend it to incorporate areas that don't have that investment level, we'll have to work with the department to see exactly how they'll allot that new development.
Yeah, I'm thinking if an area were to be redeveloped, there would be that significant investment.
Absolutely. And we are not limited in the number of CEDs we can create. And so if we had another area where we wanted to create that would meet that $50 million threshold, we can create as many as we'd like.
Is there a minimum acreage? So 75 is
Minimum
kind of.
20. 20.
20, thank you.
And if Dublin Village Center and/or OCLC were to redevelop as your plan calls for, those would be examples of projects that would easily meet those thresholds with large-scale redevelopments. Any other questions? So we will proceed to advertise on those and get city manager to sign and file for the mayor's review
If we could have a motion.
to that effect.
Yeah, just if we could have a motion authorizing the steps outlined above.
So moved.
Second.
Ann?
Vice Mayor Reiner?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Ms. Salee?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Amorose Grooms?
Yes.
Ms. Aludo?
Yes.
Mr. Lucklider?
Yes.
Thank you.
Staff comments. Dana?
Good evening, members of council. Several items I'd like to address with you tonight, most of which are from the informational packet that we gave you. The first one has to do with the trash receptacle screening. That's the one that staff is asking for some guidance on. I don't feel like you have to do that tonight, but if you'd like to discuss that tonight or give your feedback, we'd certainly welcome that. Vince Papsadero, Director of Planning, is here as well if you have any questions.
I have a number of questions about this. Was one of the champions and one of the people who I notice when these receptacles aren't screened properly. I noticed that, and I notice sometimes people leave them out. And I'm curious, I guess you're saying that people won't place them inside their garage, or they don't have a garage, or when I think of Dublin, I think everybody's got a garage. So I'm curious, is this the historic district that we have this issue, or is it, throughout? And I guess I want to make sure we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater when we're talking about this ordinance, because I think from a community appearance standpoint, it's crucial. And so I'm curious, I want to know more, and maybe photographic evidence or some kind of more detail about where the problems are, what the problems are, and what the solutions look like.
Absolutely. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. The issue is certainly somewhat rooted in historic Dublin, but is also in other parts of the city. Could be a function of folks maybe not having enough room in their garages, I can't say, but staff, between complaints that have come into the city staff, as well as when routinely inspecting parts of the city, have found problems on a somewhat regular basis. As noted in the memo, this past year, there were really about 70 violations that were called in. 35 resulted in letters, 35 were resolved with the code enforcement officers. And so those weren't just in historic Dublin. It's probably more of a problem there because of the size of the lots, the parcels, the buildings. And there are more physical constraints in historic Dublin for some blocks. But there are other issues in the city where this has come up. So, and I think it's been kind of an ongoing concern on the part of code enforcement staff. Looking for a bit more flexibility for homeowners to meet the intent of the code beyond just the concept of putting landscaping around every side of those receptacles, but a bit more flexibility. Similar to what was approved by council for rain barrels and ground-mounted AC units, which allows 3 sides to be screened, or 2 sides in the structure, 3 sides. One side open so that you can access the units. that sort of a solution is being suggested by staff. Historic Dublin probably requires more attention and more detail in terms of what's an adequate approach, and so we don't have details in the memo, but we do the homework to look into that and work with the ARB. I can certainly come back with photos and examples of what staff has run into around town.
I'd appreciate
share.
that. Because just at the beginning, and our home has a small garage. I don't know, it's a double garage, but it's very small. And I can't imagine that someone can't put their trash cans inside their garage. That just strikes me as, if they have a garage, that's where you put them. I don't know. And that's certainly, would be my preference, is to have them inside of a garage, because of the layers of, well, is this screened, is it not screened, is it, what types of screening are acceptable, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I would personally, I don't know how the rest of council feels, but I would personally like to see some pictures and understand more what the issues are. And then if we do need to call out Historic Dublin specifically, that's probably another, I'm guessing that the solution that fits there might not be a good idea for the rest of the community, and vice versa.
I agree wholeheartedly, Amy. This is probably one of the areas I'm not in favor of a whole lot of leeway. So if you want to come forward with maybe some examples of the solutions that you're proposing and some of the problems that exist, that would be really helpful for me, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to distinguish between, what is just inconvenient versus an impossibility. I'm certainly sympathetic to what is an impossibility. I suppose like Amy and a lot of our residents, I don't have an overly generous two-car garage. One of my two cars that we garage happens to be a good-sized minivan. And I have the two full-size trash receptacles stored in my garage, obviously. And so, there are the options, as we all know, to have, choose smaller receptacles if you don't need the larger ones. I remember when this was first being piloted, it was not in my neighborhood to begin with, but I asked for the two largest receptacles, because there were some people that perhaps rightfully were anxious about this, but I said, ask the city staff to bring the receptacles to me and let me experience it, so that I would be well equipped to answer those criticisms. And, and it's not as though I don't have anything else in my garage. I mean, I'm storing a lawnmower and all the usual things that you would think people are storing. So this gives me a lot of concern. That's not to say I'm not sympathetic to those cases of impossibility. But I guess I'd also like to point out that it appears as though the vast majority of the community is able to comply. When we say 35 notices going out or 70 notices going out, given all the households, the vast majority of the community seems to be able to comply. And that, I don't know what to make of the complaints, but it seems to me that people support the storage. Now, I know staff isn't suggesting that we not engage in any screening whatsoever, obviously. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
You got what you need?
We do. Thank you very much. Appreciate the feedback on that, and we'll get back to you. The other item that I wanted to point out in the packet had to do with the residential broadband internet services. Appreciate Doug putting this together, and I hope we're recommending that we continue to engage residents sort of in an open forum with them as we have been. We've got a little bit more research to do. We need to engage the industry. We need to engage Connect Ohio. We need to engage the Department of Commerce and a little bit more of the residents to really understand where the gap is. I believe it's neighborhood-oriented. My personal assessment, having dealt with this for about 20-some years and dealing with the fiber issues and formerly cable TV franchises and all that kind of stuff. So wanted to have more of just open dialogue with this group of residents, very interested, and I think it's actually a greater opportunity for more to be involved that way rather than just having a committee or referring it to a committee. But that's our recommendation. Obviously, we'll, certainly follow the direction that you want to give us.
So you're thinking of this informal group versus a formal task force?
For now.
For now.
Could always, formalize that more if as we dig a little bit deeper and find out we've got maybe more of an issue than we thought we had. We can certainly look at formalizing it more, but right now we're still scratching the surface, and we're going to work expeditiously to get a handle on that.
Dana, help me understand, is this local government competing with the private sector in terms of?
Well, potentially could be, but that's something we would prefer to avoid. We'd prefer.
So how do you do that?
Well, I think initially we want to make sure we understand what the issue is. Is there lack of service from the industry? We do have some neighborhoods that are only served by one provider, while we've got others that are served by three. But that's, a result of the industry's willingness to invest or not. Also, remember, we lost control and authority on franchise agreements probably, I don't know, close to 10-plus years ago. And frankly, as a result, we've lost visibility, which is why in our citizen survey, the last couple times, we've been asking that question about internet service, because that's the only method we've had to monitor it, so.
A couple thoughts. It was interesting in Mr. Saperstein's presentation, that was one of the lowest ranks we got was for internet capabilities. So when Doug, he did a great job presenting to those groups too. Just really want to thank you for that. But out of those discussions, there was a lot of different discussions that happened as well. Some of them surrounded wireless in the parks and how to make our parks more active in terms of wireless capabilities. There were a number of issues, and I don't want us to leave the thought of having a task force yet, because I think there's a lot of other issues. This broadband is certainly one of them, but I think there's a lot of technology issues that if we had the expertise of a group of people like this, that it would be a really wealth of information for the city. So last week we sat back there and we did interviews for boards and commissions, and I think at the end of the evening we were all stunned at the level of talent that came before us and was willing to give of their time and their talents. And I think this might be another area where we could really get a lot of that feedback. I know several years ago we did a bicycle task force, and certainly bicycles are an important mode of transportation, and we want to do all we can with that. But in terms of transportation, from the digital perspective, from a technology task force, I think that we can't have too much information. So I appreciate this. I appreciate the intentional nature that we're going forward with this, and I'm going to look forward to hearing some reports, because I'm not quite ready to give up on a task force for technology.
Well, and I'm certainly not suggesting we don't do that. I think my point is we just got to do a little bit more digging, and just sort of an open forum with residents, I think, will help us to understand better, and then get these industry experts and folks in to talk to that greater group first, and then certainly go from there. So I certainly don't mean to suggest we would not come back to you ultimately with that.
And I think maybe broadening the scope of what we look at. If it's just internet service providers, there might be a lot of other technical issues that we sure could use, people that are out in the private sector every day dealing with this stuff, the insight that they would, be able to bring to us.
Correct.
Thank you.
Certainly. Just a couple other items. Thank you for that information and guidance. Appreciate that. In your packet, you'll see a new capital construction and study and design outlook information packet. So it gives, this is intended to kind of give you that ongoing update on capital projects that I think council had wanted to kind of keep an eye on. We'll try to get this to you, an update probably, I'm going to say every other month right now, and we'll see how that goes.
That was very good, by the way, Dan. I appreciated that.
Thank you. I appreciate all the effort of Public Works staff and Matt's staff and pulling that together with Parks and Recreation. Also another communication outlook update, and also a legislative update in your pack as well. The reason I'm holding this one up is it didn't get to us in time before we put this out, but Ohio Municipal League has appointed its new executive director, and that is Kent Scarrett, who has been with OML as a lobbyist for a number of years. was pretty active on the House Bill 5 and a lot of other issues facing municipalities over the last couple of years. So that appointment was made, and we found out about it kind of about the Thursday timeframe. I just also want to publicly acknowledge and thank staff for their preparation of the State of the City. I appreciate everyone that came out for that. Hopefully it was informative for everyone. I had a great time doing it, and I appreciate the opportunity that we have every year I'm kidding around, to do that, and to do that in a way that's very professional and that we can get out in front of everyone. I spoke to, I don't know, there must have been 350 or 400 Wendy's employees today, and thanked Wendy's again for the use of the facility, and Emil Mrolik was there, so I was able to acknowledge him. I just wanted to let you know that I was able to thank him personally for that. Also, we did have a meeting last week. Barb Cox and Todd Garwick of our engineering division sponsored a meeting and engaged residents regarding the water and sewer extension program at the rec center. I thought it was well attended, and information flowed from that, and we got some great feedback. And then last is council work session for next Monday. I sent an email out earlier today suggesting we not do that. I know you're all brokenhearted over that, but I think, as it turns out, we had put some topics for next Monday that actually will wound up, I think, significantly being covered as a result of the discussion in the retreat. And then based on that, I think it'll be more productive to come back as planned in April for a work session. So with that, that's all I have this evening, unless you have any questions.
Questions? Hearing none. Committee reports. Amy, P&Z?
I do not have anything, thank you.
Mike?
Administrative Committee has been busy. We had a huge turnout for the boards and commissions. We had over 30 applications for 3 spots, as you all know. In fact, we had so many we had to reschedule the CSAC applicants, so we will be doing that in the future, so stay tuned with respect to CSAC. We did appoint, we made all the reappointments this evening. As you heard, there are 2 new appointments with Julia Caruso for Dublin Arts Council, welcome, and also for BZA, Sarah Herbert. As was alluded to earlier, we had incredible resumes and qualifications from the community, and it was very difficult making decisions, but those are the 2 selections that we have for those 2 spots that were open. Goal setting, as you know, is Thursday evening and all day Friday. And the draft reviews have been completed. They're awaiting council input. They were all sent to you early afternoon today, along with the attachments that would help you make those, make comments and review those for us. The next step would then, after council input, would be to schedule a sit-down meeting with both Ann and Dana, and that should conclude the reviews for this year. And that's all I have on admin.
Thank you, Mike. John, Community Development?
Community Development Committee will meet the 14th, this Monday at 5:30, and it should be a relatively short meeting.
Back to you, Mike. Finance?
Finance, our next quarterly update.
Sure. Go ahead, Mike.
Our next quarterly update for finance, it will be Monday, April 11th, prior to the meeting at 5:30, or prior to our regular meeting. And then we will have a health benefits kind of review on April 25th. So that's really what's coming up with finance. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Amy, Public Services Committee? Tim, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission?
Nothing.
Logan Union?
Nothing.
US 33?
Nothing.
Strike 3, you are out. John, Dublin Arts Council?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that the big fundraiser is coming up, and you can't spend a better evening than at the Dublin Arts Council garden party. Well done, and always a beautiful event, and it starts at 6:30 at OCLC, so I just hope everybody gets a chance to get out, get their tickets, and get involved with that. Thank you.
What is the date on that?
That's the 22nd, Friday of April. See you all there.
Got it. Indeed you will. Dublin Board of Education, Chris and Christina?
We don't have anything. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 13th.
What else do we got? Washington Township, that's me. I don't think, Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add? I don't know we've had any interaction. We went to the dinner a couple weeks ago, which was very well attended, a great event. Chief was there. Wonderful organization. You guys just do a great job. Great job. Council Roundtable, Chris.
Okay. There's been a number of great events that I've had the opportunity to attend since we were together last. On the February the 23rd, we had the Chamber of Commerce Economic Forecast Breakfast. Dana was there and a number of the staff folks, and Tim, and I know you were there too, Greg. It was a really impressive presentation, and I thought that was time really well spent. I got a lot out of that. On the 25th, there was a meeting of the Historic Dublin Foundation, and they had an initial brainstorm meeting. It was pretty informal. They had a few folks that they invited from the district. I know they invited Vince and myself, and it was, I look forward to hearing more about what the group has in store. I think they're just in their infancy stages and starting to identify what it is that they want to be about. So I'm really excited. They are a passionate group of people that want to take a lot of ownership over their community, and you know, particularly the historic nature of what they're doing. They're looking to apply for some grants, perhaps, that would make funds available for people of historic properties, both in the historic district and around the community at large, so that they might be able to make improvements on those from grant money that might be available from the state or the federal level. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm not aware of another meeting. I don't think that there has been one set, and I'm not sure that they, you know, they're kind of just a private organization. They probably may just want to meet a few times on their own and see what direction the wind's taking them. But very exciting.
You know, excuse me,
yes, sir.
Chris, I mean, this council's always been very supportive of the historic district and all that. Dana, do you think this is an opportunity for Vince and you guys to sort of look into exactly the charge and the goal and what we could do to help? I know we have kind of a break now between now and the next council meeting. Does that give you an opportunity to look into that a little bit?
Right, and I had asked Vince to attend so that we could learn what this organization was intending, what their focus may be. So I appreciate that he did that and reported back. One thing that we are doing as staff, last year I had pulled staff together to take a look at reorganizing our approach to Historic Dublin relative to staff and how we liaison to Historic Dublin, how we interacted with the various voices and interest groups there, and also just even from a maintenance perspective, we used to, we walked it, try to make sure that things are up to date and being kept. As I looked around the table at that meeting, I realized most everyone in the room was not going to be here after that. So I decided to wait because we knew we were going to reorganize. New folks were coming on board. So I think it's this week, Michelle's facilitating a meeting for me to reconvene that group to take a look at how we're going to liaison with Historic Dublin, reapproach that. So I only bring that up to you because in the whole scheme of all this, we backed up and regrouped. We set that meeting, I don't know, a month or so ago to review that this week. So now that everyone's kind of ramped on and getting comfortable in their roles, I wanted to reorganize our approach to that from a staff perspective. So we'll report back to you on that, as well as our take on the foundation group and get some more information. Perhaps they'll, give a little bit more information as well, as Chris pointed out, over the next month before you meet again. So we'll report back on all that.
We will appreciate the information. One of the exciting things about it, like you said, Chris, it's private citizens.
They're taking ownership, and that's wonderful, and taking pride and wanting to do something. So I look forward to hearing what comes out of that, and anything that I hear, I'll certainly, moving forward, I'll certainly give a report and roundtable, and I'm sure that the balance of you would as well. On the 26th, went to the Morpsey breakfast overview, and that was really, it was a beneficial time and got a lot out of seeing the projects that they're working on and the availability of what they have for us as a community and their willingness to partner with us to meet our needs, particularly in the map-making realms and a number of things like that. So that was great. On the 27th, the Ohio Municipal League had their annual meeting at Embassy Suites, and many of the Frost Brown Todd people did presentations there, and they represent a number of people, but certainly Dublin as well, and we were well represented there from that standpoint. Had lunch with the new city council member at Shawnee Hills, and so I'm really looking forward to having follow-up lunches and engaging him in that way. On the 27th, that evening, the Dublin Women's Philanthropic Club held their Snowflake Gala, and Peggy Fisher Hansen was the honoree this year, and it was a lovely evening, and she was so gracious in her receipt of that. And I just wanted to thank Robin Moran and Sharon Zimmers for sponsoring that. They've given over $300,000 in grants since their inception in 1978, so they're doing great work on behalf of our community, and I want to encourage that. The Dublin Difference Showcase was a really nice evening. I would call it I think I called it at one point in time a science fair, but it was really a STEM fair, and it was interesting to see all of the schools, elementary, middle school, high schools were represented, and many of you were there as well. That was a great night, as was the State of the City, so thank you, Dana, for representing our community well in that, and for the legwork of putting that all together. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chris. Christina?
I'll keep it short. I don't have anything.
Nothing. Mike?
Yeah, just to reiterate the Washington Township awards. They had the awards banquet that we attended. There's really a lot of ceremony. They had the presentation of the colors. Everybody was in their Class A's, and we had bagpipers and the whole thing. So it was really interesting. You'd be very proud of some of the stories that were told about the extra effort that our firefighters go through with our community. Pretty amazing. And many of them were awarded. I know Joel Campbell got an award as well for his help with the levee. And, he's always been active in the community, so that was all good, very good stuff. And Dana, this capital improvements project, I was going through this is really, really helpful. It's got the completion dates, which we get asked about all the time, and trying to keep track of every one of those is very difficult. I think even maybe the question you were asked earlier about Glick Road might even be on there somewhere. So
I was going to scramble for it, but I thought,
yeah, so it's there. We just got to find it. So, but appreciate it. And the State of the City was just extremely well done. You hit it out of the park for all of us, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Amy?
Just want to echo everybody's comments on the State of the City. It's one of my favorite nights of the year, work-wise, because it is I just completely am overwhelmed with pride in our community and our staff and what everybody is able to accomplish. It's extraordinary, and it's such a delight to go because everybody is just so complimentary and everybody is so happy, and we just kind of get to celebrate everything that we are and everything that we do. And so thank you very much, Dana. You did a great job representing us. And Angel, I love the videos. That was an interesting way to do it, and I'm sure it made for a more relaxing evening for those of you who were able to be on video. And so in any case, thank you. And I ran into a resident who said that he sent an email with some ideas about funding for sewer and water and individual connections. And in talking to this gentleman, I don't think I've ever seen the email. And so I want to talk with staff a little bit about this individual and the claims of this email being sent, because I don't think it made it here somehow.
I have not seen one. I'll check with staff and see if that went through Todd or Barb or somebody.
Yeah.
We'll check and see.
Okay, thanks. I'll talk to you about that offline. That's all I have. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Amy. Tim?
Thank you. Likewise, I would echo the sentiments expressed with respect to what a good job everyone did in connection with the State of the City. And Dana, your excellent presentation. That was a lot of pressure, a lot of FaceTime for you on the stage there, and
Too much. I'm going to work on that next year.
Job.
Thank you for that.
Job well done. Seriously, I mean that in all sincerity, but hats off to everyone. It's a great facility as well, and what a turnout. So anyway, congratulations to everyone involved in that. As Ms. Grooms pointed out, I attended the February 23rd Dublin Chamber of Commerce Economic Forecast breakfast at the Dublin Methodist Hospital. Of course, you were there, Dana, and other staff. Am I missing a council member that was there? Great. Thank you. I'm sorry. But I think that everyone would agree that attended, and I suppose not surprisingly, and I'm not just trying to paint a rosy picture, but I think the general assessment was that the state of the central economy and outlook is good, is positive. And Dublin is a big player in that status, if you will, and in that outlook, I believe. Also, together with several of my colleagues on council, attended the March 1st Dublin Schools Showcase, and it was very impressive. And in going around to the different displays, I mean, these kids, I mean, these little geniuses, it was very intimidating. I mean, I was intimidated by a couple of third graders. It's easy to do, but anyway, very, very impressive. And hats off to the school district. That was a fine event for them. And then finally, with respect to the Community Attitude Survey, you know, it kind of felt to me this evening, you know, I feel like there ought to be confetti coming down from the ceiling for that. You know, we do so many of these things, and I, for one, don't take it for granted. You know, I believe that's a reflection on council. You know, that's how some may view it. But I think that most of the credit, if not all the credit, should be given to staff. And so, you know, I think all staff should pat themselves on the back. I mean, it's, you know, we wouldn't get, you're not, I'm not picking up anybody's trash. I'm not plowing anybody's streets.
Or responding to fire.
There they are. You know, but anyway, you know, really credit to staff. You know, thank you very much, and I hope it's at the State of the City. You know, we had that one, you know, screenshot of just some, but not all, of the many accomplishments in 2015, the awards we had received, and the recognition across all departments, and you know, I think that's reflected in this community attitude survey and the high rankings that we have. Is that to say that we're perfect in every respect? You know, no, we're not. You know, but I do know, you know, Dana, with your leadership and with the quality staff that we have, you know, both at the executive level and throughout the organization, that we're always striving to be better. And you can see that reflected in some of the ratings. You know, the increases over 2013, in some respects where you would think that they couldn't be higher. So anyway, you know, I hope that staff and you all take time to, I can't find the right word, bask in you know, that positive limelight. You know, it's well-deserved. It's the result of a lot of hard work, and as a council member, I thank you because it makes me look good. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. John?
Yeah, the Dublin Arts have opened up a new exhibit on the 1st, on Tuesday, and you know, we've had some pretty tough ones. We've gone through Vietnam, and then we've gone through the resistance to oppression and the value of humanity, and this one's very uplifting, very colorful, very beautiful, very positive, and as usual, the Arts Council is right on top of it. So it's really related to our national parks and their anniversary, so they hit it just perfectly. And I do want to just echo my sentiments. I think, Dana, you did an extraordinary job, as did the entire staff. Just an amazing opportunity to see what the city's doing, and really, and not everybody, of course, was there to see it, but if they get the opportunity, they should get on the internet and view this, because it was really well done. I had our staff at my office review the Bridge Street film, and they were very, very impressed, not only with the other presentations, but just what the city's really doing and flushing out for a lot of people. I know I went out the door and someone said to me, you know, I wasn't sure about the pedestrian bridge, but God, I get it. It's part of the whole thing. It's brilliant. It belongs there. I was questioning it. Now that I've seen how it all worked, it's an integral part of the project. So it was really well done. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And the thing about the State of the City that I thought was really interesting, two things about it, was one, it wasn't just a marketing piece or a commercial.
it really was just a reflection of going around and looking at the state of affairs of every segment of our community. And as you sit there and you look at it, you realize two things. One, how high that bar is, and that bar is being maintained that high all the way across the board, which is just astoundingly impressive. And also, when you look at what this city has done year after year after year after year to keep the standard high, but what it's going to do next year to make the standard even higher and looking into the future. And the presentation that you guys did was 100% professional, top-notch, can't be beat, and the product that you described was the same thing. So I really appreciate everything that you did. I look forward to seeing everybody at the parade this weekend. One thing that I really appreciated in the video that was done, the introduction, was emphasizing the relationship with the schools. And a couple people have mentioned the Dublin difference and what we went to up there, and they had a packed auditorium of people just pounding down the doors to see what's going on in our schools. And when we can highlight our direct relationship with them and how interrelated we are with them, I think that's good for both sides. So I really appreciate that being part of the message. There's one sort of minor issue that I want us to keep our eyes on. I might have mentioned this to you, Dana, or I might not have, that evidently this Wyandotte Woods project that's coming to P&Z on Thursday, I guess they went out, and I don't know when they passed this thing protecting the Indiana bats, if they knew that that was a go hurry up and cut down all the trees kind of a regulation, but evidently a bunch of trees came down to meet that deadline. And apparently there were several identified up there in that project that were supposed to be saved. And one big one came down on Friday and they ground the stump out and hauled away all the, you know, what do you call that when you churn the stump up and you have all that sawdust? I guess it's sawdust. They sort of churned it up, grabbed it all up and got it out in about an hour on late on Friday afternoon. That's how it was reported to me. If we could keep our eye on that issue, I mean, I don't know how, there's nothing we can do to replace that tree, but these people are going to be coming to B&Z asking for some approvals. We might also have some questions about the attitude of complying with what we're asking them to do.
Well, you know, certainly we're disappointed in that, and, you know, I can never know when and where someone's going to show up with a chainsaw, but you know, the point is certainly well taken, and I know that we're trying to watch a lot of the projects that are coming online. This, not picking on it, but this Indiana bat deadline seems to create frenzy with some folks in terms of meeting that deadline in the spring and the fall. So, but we've been sensitive to that, and in fact, I think we even mentioned it in our information memo, but that one was one that was pretty disappointing. I think there was some confusion too over what trees could or couldn't go, not on our end, but their end, but that's no excuse. I think, you know, what my first reaction to that was, well, what do we have that we can, what punitive action can we take when that sort of thing happens? And we don't really have anything on the books for that, but there's certainly the tree ordinance and fee and so forth could be applied to that, but it's not probably close to the value. So that's something that we probably ought to take a look at when that sort of thing happens. So we just don't really have the teeth on that. We do. I mean, we'll take a look at some other things, but as far as a direct punitive measure on something like that, we don't. Some cities do have that.
We can document it, though. There was a tree survey
Yeah.
for
We
the
will.
original
Yeah.
phases, so maybe it might be worthwhile to go ahead and take inventory now that there's nothing there and
Oh.
everything is.
We'll definitely, in fact, Vince and Don and I already talked about that, and that's high on
Thank
our
you.
list, yes.
Don't I have not heard, or I don't believe that the city did anything wrong. I'm just wondering if there was, I don't know if we just asked the question, and I think maybe you're right, if we beef up some kind of an enforcement or a punitive measure, if they did this on purpose.
You can place value on trees. I mean, that's common practice. There are people in town that can tell you, I recall Muirfield Village did it with Emerald Ash Borer, and they were trying to document the loss to the golf course, and they had some folks come in that hung a price tag on every tree, and perhaps we would consider.
Our own land appraisals will put price tags on various kinds of vegetation of all types, so you'll see that in some of our appraisal work. So it's definitely has high value. I mean, beyond intrinsic value, which we have a great deal of, but monetary value, you know, you can't put a price sometimes on that.
So am I to understand that that site was cleared, or?
there was a, I don't know, it was described, what do you call it? It's just like a V trunk of, I believe it was a maple tree
Okay.
that was 18, 19 inches in diameter, each of the two trunks, and it's gone. And the site is pretty well clear. I mean, it is, I saw some pictures. It is
Yeah,
pretty.
and we'll inventory that, and I know there was a lot of email going on with that today, and dialogue with the resident that brought
I
it to our
think staff
attention, and
was
so.
right on top of it. They had the trees identified, they even had some of these trees marked, and so wherever the ball was dropped on this, the guy with the axe, if we need to pass some legislation that enhances the deterrent incentive, I think we should maybe look into that, use this as an example, because each time it happens is one more time we can't do anything about it.
Right. And we'll report back on, we'll shoot an email or something out to give you an update on that situation, so, and you'll probably hear more about it at P&Z.
Except for I won't be at PNC because I'll be at our retreat.
Well, then, everyone else at P&Z will hear about it, for sure.
Anything else? All right, we are adjourned.